개코랑 같이 있어 지금. 아 그냥 우리끼리 소주나 한잔 하지 뭐 소박하게. 클럽? 에이 너 가면 또 잠들 거잖아. yeah.
Welcome to the KYP podcast, a mini episode about learning about our guest's journey. My name is Danny. I'm here with my co-host
KYP James,
Kevin G.
And we are joined here by a very special person that means a lot to me, one of my mentor and the founder of Master Your Talk, Brenden.
Hey, it's great to be here, everyone. Thanks for having me.
welcome.
Hey, Brenden.
So Brenden and I, we go way back. I believe I was day 0 with you.
Yeah, probably day -1, actually, before it started, but yeah.
So Brenden, I think for the audience, please tell them and tell us what you do in life.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, it's great to be on the show, so thanks for having me. So what do I do? So my name is Brenden. I'm the founder of Master Talk. Master Talk is obviously both a coaching practice, where I train a lot of C-level executives, senior VPs on how to become really powerful communicators in the boardroom. But more importantly, for the purposes of this conversation, it's not just a coaching practice, it's a movement, right? For me, the vision of Master Talk is how do we make communication tools free and accessible for the whole world? And that's really been my passion, ever since I started it. Actually, when I started the YouTube channel, it wasn't even supposed to be a business. I was just making videos for fun in my mom's basement, funny enough. And then it later turned into what it is today.
And I know your goal really was your mission itself is to provide the resources to people who cannot afford your service. You always mention that little 6-year-old girl somewhere in buttfuck nowhere who really need, okay, maybe not buttfuck nowhere, but somewhere.
Probably gets us canceled.
But tell me about that story. How did you come up with that idea of that 6-year-old girl in India who needs the resources to be a better communicator?
Yeah, for sure, Danny. And what's been fascinating, all of you, is when I started Master Talk, I never really had that vision in my mind, because how it began was when I was in college. I did these things called case competitions. Think of it like professional sports for nerds. So other guys my age are playing football or rugby or soccer or some other sport you probably wouldn't see me playing, right? I did presentations professionally. That's how I learned how to talk. So the main idea for Master Talk was helping the other college students, because I started working a job at IBM in consulting. So I realized that, I'm flying out every single week. I don't have time to coach everybody anymore. So I started making free videos to mostly help them. But then later, and this is what happens when you start something, the vision, you figure it out later in life. Then when I got older, I realized, wait a second, when Elon Musk was 10 years old and when he was 11 years old, he couldn't really afford a communication coach. No one really taught him how to talk. And yeah, obviously today he doesn't really care that much about working on his communication skills. But if we had helped people like him speak better, the world would just move in a much more brighter future, I think. That's why I always like to tell Danny in general, James and Kevin, is I believe the next Elon Musk is a 7-year-old girl who can't afford a coach. So in that way, if I really create those resources, people will gravitate towards them.
Yeah. And communication is such a key aspect of pretty much all factors of life, right? For career, the people who tend to get promoted are the ones who can communicate or voice their opinions or basically sell themselves and foster a strong network. In relationships, a lot of the reasons why relationships are unhealthy or toxic or don't work out is there's a lack of open communication. And public speaking is one of the biggest fears for most people, especially in school. If you ask people, what their biggest fear is, public speaking comes up a lot, right?
Absolutely. And you're making a great point there, Kevin, where you actually talked about school, which is an important piece I speak about in the fear of speaking, which is where does it even come from, right?
Yeah.
And where it comes from is actually school. Because think about it, every presentation you give, whether you live in the US, in Canada, in the UK, China, it doesn't matter. All of those presentations have 3 fundamental problems in middle school. The first one is all of them are mandatory. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, hey, James, Kevin, Danny, you want to present all day and eat breakfast? Like, nobody says that. Nobody wants to do that. The second big challenge is all of those presentations are never tied to a topic you're actually passionate about.
Right. They assign one.
Exactly. So it's never like, hey, Kevin, what are you passionate about? Are you passionate about sports or music or entertainment? No, you have to talk about Shakespearean poetry. You don't really have
Christopher Columbus.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I did one of those actually. and then the third problem, which is actually the worst one, is every presentation is tied to a punishment. Right? So if you don't do a great job at school, nobody says, oh, let me give you like a pat on the back. It's no, your chances of getting into college are down like by 30% and you're done. So because of that, 100% of all the presentations are mandatory. You never give a the topic. They're punishable. So you grow up believing communication's a chore and nobody wants to get better at doing the dishes.
Another big aspect for me in school, I was terrified of public speaking. Like my hands would shake, like I'm sweating from my palms, is all your friends in the class are there. You know, are watching you, your boys in the back making faces. You know, the girl you like is sitting there, so it's fucking stressful, you know. And I would say, I always thought, you know, my social skills, communicating with people, like in social settings, was my strong point. But public speaking was so terrifying. I feel like because of those things you talked about in the environment, when you're first introduced to it in school, it's not a very encouraging environment to get passionate about communicating.
Super well said. Absolutely.
When it comes to communication, right? Like what you guys just mentioned, how it's very intimidating growing up and learning communication because you have so many negative factors affecting how you perceive communication. I wanted to know on your side, how did you practice that communication? Because you said you did a lot of case comp, but you can get only so far with case comp, right? You have a lot of videos talking about vocal tones, about fixing your ums and ahs, and you coach a lot of these people, but you don't learn all of this by presenting in case comps.
100%, Danny. So case competitions was definitely that first step for me, right? Okay, I want to work on these competitions. That's how I built the foundation of speaking. But then as I got older, I realized, especially when I started coaching people, nobody knows what a case competition is, right? So when I was talking about, oh, this is how you need to do it, I realized how I learned speaking wasn't duplicated to the real world. I couldn't say, okay, James, go and do a case competition. It's like, he would be like, what? Like, I can't do that. I can't replicate it. Because he might not be in business school or he might not be in that specific program. So then the answer becomes, okay, how do I simplify and systematize communication for anybody? Even if you're a 5-year-old, you listen to what I say and you go, I know what to do. So in that way, Danny, what I learned over time is communication is like juggling 18 balls at the same time. So one of those balls is body language, one of them storytelling, one of them is facial expressions, one of them is knowing how to tell stories. And if you don't understand the 18, you don't juggle them effectively, they all fall to the ground.
Interesting.
Right? Which brings me to the next point, which is what are the 3 easiest balls to juggle? And if you focus on those 3, I'll just give the first one, but I'm happy to share the others if you guys want, which is the random word exercise. Pick a word like bone or dog or ceiling or painting and give a 60-second presentation out of thin air. And if you do that, then you'll get a lot better at speaking pretty quickly.
So you remember when we first started the podcast, Kevin always was surprised. He was like, Danny can make an intro out of everything. Like he can find a word and do that because I've learned it from the best.
Yeah.
Can we do an exercise?
100%. Let's have James give me a word. Give me anything that you want.
Okay. Socks.
Socks? Okay, cool. So just for people listening to the show, James did not give me the word socks prior to this. So I'm inventing this. So the presentation is going to start in 3, 2, 1. Ever since I was a kid, I never really paid that much attention to buying socks or even caring about it. Heck, even the ones I'm wearing, I got at a job fair, a conference I was at a few months ago, just because they were giving away free socks. But then as I got older, what I realized is every little detail of your environment plays a big impact on how you live your life. And for me, that didn't start with socks. It started with a mattress because I hadn't bought a mattress in 10, 15 years because my excuse was, well, I don't have any money. Like, why should I invest in this? Until my coach yelled at me and he said, what are you doing with your life, Brenden? You're doing well financially. You should sleep on a nice bed every single day. And ever since that day, I started upgrading my environment, from the socks I was wearing to the shoes that I was wearing to the way that I looked at life. And the lesson I want to share with all of you, and it doesn't have to be your socks, maybe it's drinking a glass of hot water every morning. Maybe it's smoking a little less. Maybe it's drinking a little bit more water instead of anything else. Make those small decisions in your life, because those decisions, even if you can keep the same socks that you're always wearing, can make a big difference in your life. So that's the random word exercise. Just do something.
Whoa,
Wow, very
interesting.
impressive. Can you walk us through just really basic kind of how did you mentally approach that exercise? If you break down kind of the steps you took to from getting the word socks to thinking of your topic and everything.
For sure, Kevin. So the point that I always want to drive at the beginning, everyone, is you do not get points for doing the random word exercise well. You get points for doing the random word exercise a lot. So let's ask James on this. James, how many times do you think I've done the random word exercise? Let's take a guess. What do you think the number is?
In your lifetime?
Yeah, in my life.
Probably over 1,000.
Pretty close, pretty close. So
Yeah.
the answer is 3,000.
Oh, wow.
Right? So this is not something I just like, oh, like I'll teach it 3 times and I'll teach a student how to do it. So this is really, and that's why you were pretty close to the number, James. It's in the thousands, where because I've practiced it a lot, I get really good at it. So the first piece I would share is get to 100 as quickly as possible, and don't worry about the results. So for somebody who's older listening to this, I always recommend doing this with kids. If you have children, obviously nobody in this room does. So in our case, it might be a friend, a niece, a nephew, and you start doing the random word exercise with them. But I will give you a small frame, which is, now that I've done it so many times, the trick is the first couple of seconds, you just start talking, right? To show confidence in your message. Then the second piece is to try and tie in the word, like socks in this case, into some part of your life. So I kind of went a little left field. I talked about mattresses and I kind of brought it back to socks.
Very cool.
And
Yeah.
then the third piece is you end with the key lesson. But you don't have to follow that framework. That's really the point I want to drive.
Wow.
So there's not one size fit all. The idea is as you personally do it multiple times, you'll find your own kind of frame.
100%. And that's actually the point. You actually drove the key takeaway home, Kevin, which is all of you, if I gave all of you the word socks, you would all approach that word completely differently.
Of course.
So I don't want you to look at me and say only Brenden has the right answer, whereas the key to the random word is for you to be comfortable in your own way of giving the answer. So that way, whenever you're back in the boardroom or you're dealing with clients or you're in school giving a presentation, you're really comfortable speaking off the cusp.
Did you, when you first encountered public speaking, first time you did a case competition, was it instant like, oh, wow, I have kind of like a natural talent for this? Or was it kind of you had to work on it?
Dude, I wish I was super talented out the get. I mean, I'm not going to deny I have some innate gifting in speaking, but most of my life I actually struggled with communication, guys. And the reason is because I'll give you the spiel. When I was getting started, like in life, in kindergarten, as you know, in Montreal, you need to know how to speak French, which is a language I didn't know. So my parents came up to me and they said, you have to study French, which of course today was a big gift because I'm trilingual today, right? Like I speak English, French, and Tamil.
Yeah.
But growing up as a kid, it was really challenging for me to be in front of a classroom and go, bonjour, and like figure out a presentation. So that's number one. The second challenge was I have a bachelor's degree in accounting. Like it's literally the opposite of what you'd expect, like a communication expert to be studying. And the third one, as you can all see, I have a physical disability in my left arm because of an accident I had at birth. So because of that, even now I get self-conscious where it's like I'm speaking, like let's say I'm speaking to a group of executives and they're always looking at my arm. They're never looking at my face. It was only when I got to college, even when I started doing case competitions, I didn't even do them out of passion. I just did them because I wanted to get a job.
Yeah.
And then I just fell in love with them. And that's when I developed my passion for speaking later.
I do want to transition from your communication skills and how you've learned them to really looking more at your career, because we all know Brenden out here, one of the best communicator I know, because he helped me train my communication skills. But I wanted to know on your side, right? You used to follow a straight path, IBM, working in consultancy, and then you decide to take a big shift in your life. You took a leap of faith in Master Talk. And I want to learn more about that leap of faith.
100%, Danny. Like, especially in Asian culture, I'm sure all of you know this, and none of our parents are telling us, Danny, Kevin, James, when you grow up in the world, you should definitely be an entrepreneur. Like, nobody's saying that. Like the three options we have in our community, and I think in the room it's really similar. You either become a doctor, an engineer, or a loser. So you're gonna get to pick
A loser?
which one. And you get to pick. It's nice. They give you some options: doctor, engineer, or loser. So I went with accountant, which is kind of okay in Indian community. So for the first 20 years of my life, what was interesting about my upbringing is me and my parents were actually very aligned because they wanted me to have a stable career. And I actually wanted a stable career because my parents were making minimum wage at a factory. So I wasn't looking to take a chance. I never wanted to be a business owner. I know there's other people in the influencer space, like Gary Vee, Mark Cuban. Those guys are great examples of people who are what we call purebred entrepreneurs, right? So from the get-go, from they were a kid, they always wanted to do business. That was not me. Like I was like super, like I had like a 95% average in high school. Like I just wanted to get the stable path, get good grades, get a great job. And I'd spend all day playing League of Legends and studying all day. That's all I did, right? But then when I got my corporate job, I learned a really valuable lesson that completely changed my life trajectory. And that lesson was time is more valuable than money. Because I spent my whole life from like the ages of 12 up until even just a few years ago chasing money as the solution to my problems. And it was the solution to my problems for like 90% of my problems. But then when I realized groceries aren't that expensive, I started asking myself the more important question, which is, wait a second, what do I do with my time? Because I can be a partner at IBM, I can make $500,000 a year, but if I'm
10-hour days, on call all the time.
bro, I wish 10-hour days. It's like 15, 16 hours a day if you're playing at that level.
Yeah.
So that's when I took a step back and I realized, what should I do with my life? And I realized the universe gave me Master Talk and I should take it much more seriously. And I got lucky a couple of times along the way, but we got there.
Because now there's meaning with what you're doing with your time, right?
Oh yeah, super fulfilling.
And also, speaking of that transition, right? I think Brenden is easily one of the most hardworking person I know. You've been on hundreds of podcasts. Every single day you post something. Every time someone follows you, you send them a message telling them, hi, if you need some help, come visit my free workshop. You've also helped a lot of people posting different types of content, and that work ethic, really. I want to know where it comes from, and also the fact that I want to know more about how you've developed that work ethic with your business partner, Vamsi.
I mean, beautiful question. And thanks for the kind words, Danny. I think for me, where it comes from, everyone's going to give a different answer to this question. But for me, it really comes from appreciation. And I think a lot of us as second generation immigrants, people whose parents were immigrants, but we were kind of like the people born here. I don't think a lot of us fully appreciate how lucky we are. Like, think about this, right? Our parents were born in a third world country. Our parents' were born in a third world country. Every generation for thousands of years were born in a third world country, and I'm the first one. I get the golden ticket, and I get to be born in Canada. And I don't think people realize how ridiculous that is.
Crazy.
Right? It's insane. It's like I look at my life and I go, whoa, wait a second. Like, I can make $20 an hour, like Canadian dollars an hour. This is insane, even if I just get a regular job. And when you come from that perspective of gratefulness and open-mindedness, like I did with my parents, because my parents worked bloody hard to get me to where I am today, I saw it as I need to work hard because just the fact that I got here so early is already lucky enough, and I need to leverage this opportunity so that my generation, the people that come after me, and we're starting to see that with a lot of my cousins who are starting to have children, that they have a much better life than we did. And I think that's what fuels, that's one piece behind my work ethic. I think the other one is really clear purpose, right? Napoleon Hill calls this a definitiveness of purpose. When you're really clear on where you want to be in life and where you want to go, it really reminds you that you don't have a lot of time. Right? A lot of people on social media, they tell you have a lot of time. You don't have a lot of time. Like the average life expectancy in the world right now is like 77, 78 right now. So my life is already almost a third over, even if I've gained all the wisdom and I do what I love. And that urgency for running out of time also pushes me to go the extra mile when we're working together and we're doing things together.
And I want to know more about your partnership with Vamsi, because I know as a mentor for you and a very close friend, he is also a very good source of inspiration to me, because he's taught me a lot. He's given me pep talks when I met him in Florida for the first time. And I want to know more your relationship with him and how he's helped you in your endeavors.
Yeah, for sure, team. You know, for me, I got really lucky. I always like to say that I met the most important person in my 20s in September of 2019. I was 9 months into Master Talk. I was still a kid at this point. I was still making videos. I wasn't really making any money in coaching. I hadn't made a single dollar. And then when I got to Summit of Greatness, it's an event that Lewis Howes hosts. He's like the host of this podcast in Columbus, Ohio. It's in the middle of nowhere. And I attend this event and I go to a 5 a.m. workout. Not because I wanted to wake up at 5 a.m. Okay, I wake up at 9:30 every morning. I just did that so I could meet people. And Vamsi was the guy next to me. And he's the person who looked at my YouTube channel and said, hey, you could really turn this into a business. And when he said that, I started laughing. I was like, what are you talking about, dude? I'm a high-flying consultant at IBM. I'm going to be making 6 figures by the end of next year. I'm going to be a partner. I don't want to be a speaking coach. I don't coach people for money. And he said, I think your time is better spent doing this, Brenden. I think you're going to give a much more meaningful impact and difference. And he actually gave me my first 10 clients. That's actually how I started.
Wow.
Is he gave me his clients and then we split the revenue, which is something no one would ever do. That's why I was really lucky that I met Vamsi, and today we're still 50-50 partners, and he's my one-on-one coach, and I owe a lot of my success to him.
Who's Vamsi? Sorry.
Yeah, Vamsi is my
Yeah.
business partner. So he's like
Okay.
he's some guy in his 40s.
Yeah.
He always wears a Nike hat all the time.
Okay.
And he lives in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
So he has a very different life. You know, going back to business partnerships, like people ask me that advice. Like, what advice do you have to find like business partners? Like, how did you find Danny? How did you find Vamsi? And my advice, James, is always like, you just gotta try to talk to a bunch of different people, and sometimes something clicks. Like in V's case, I just call him V because his name is hard to remember and pronounce for most people. is when I first met V, we have completely different lives. Like, I love clubbing, I love partying, I'm in my 20s. Even if I don't drink or I don't smoke or do anything, I love having fun. Like, I'm always like at that event, there's like an after party on Saturday. I'm there until like 3 a.m. Like, I just dance all night. I'm crazy. Whereas he has a completely different life. He's introverted. He's in his 40s. He's been married for 17 years. He has 2 kids. He lives in a different country, but for some reason, we just work really well together. And I just wouldn't trade him for anything else. Yeah, I'm super grateful for him.
Kevin, please.
Yeah, I'm very inspired by your work ethic because, you know, obviously coming from a similar background, I have kind of the same perspective on how grateful I am that my parents remind me every single day. It's like growing up, every time my dad got me like a Nintendo or something, he's like, okay, here's your Nintendo. But you remember back in China, you know, we didn't even have an apple to eat. You know, that kind of stuff. And I like to think I'm making steps towards kind of, you know, making the best out of the opportunity they gave us. But I struggle for sure, like with all the distractions in the modern world, you know, Netflix, partying, girls, you know, what I'm trying to say is for you to have that work ethic that you do, it's not common among early 20 folks in our generation. So do you have any tips for you know, just the average 20-year-old kind of spending their time on video games, clubs, Netflix all day, doom scrolling? How do we get out there?
Yeah, for sure.
I'm asking for myself. How?
like an addict.
How do I escape? How do I escape?
And it is funny you say that, Kevin, because I saw myself a lot in your own share, like when you're phrasing the question, because we call this the guilt trip that's included with every
Asian
purchase.
guilt, immigrant
Yeah.
guilt.
Right? So every time your parents buy you a gift, there's always a guilt trip included with it. Like Walmart doesn't give you that, but they'll include it in the purchase for you. So that's one piece. The second piece, I always like to start that question with, I'm not perfect either. Like I just downloaded this Pokemon game last week called Pokemon Unite. I've just been obsessed with it. I was playing all night
damn.
yesterday. So there's no perfect formula here. But one thing I will speak to for sure is I do have an uncommon work ethic for sure. So even if I might make mistakes or play games, which I don't think is a mistake, you should have fun in life too. Of
course.
But why my output is far greater than most, I think there's a couple of reasons. Number one is, what is the long-term vision for your life? And I know we've talked about that a lot, but we don't emphasize it enough. Where a lot of young people, when they go through school, which was basically created to produce factory workers, not leaders, not people who actually have thought independent thinking, is a lot of it's just go through life. Right? We go to the party because everyone else goes to the party. We go to the bar because everyone else goes to the bar. We spend X time on this because everyone else is doing the same thing. And when you get stuck in this loop, the problem is you never take a step back and go, well, what do I actually want in life? And that lack of clarity leads to a terrible work ethic. So when I was in college, the reason, because before then I was just playing video games and studying all the time. So when I got to college and I realized that everybody was, when I got to college and I realized that I really wanted a job at a Big Four accounting firm. Like I really wanted to work at Deloitte or PwC or EY or KPMG. When I had that focus, I got 10 times more productive. Like I started going to every single event. I started networking. I started actually attending class less because I realized that this was not going to get me to the result. So the first part of that question, Kevin, is having the vision. Where are we actually going? And the only way to develop it, there's so many different ways, but I think the easiest one is if you ask yourself one hard question about your life every single day for 30 days, in a month, you'll never be the same human being ever again. Right. And one of those examples of questions, I'll throw it back to you guys, is if you had all the money in the world, how would you spend your time? And I ask this question to so many people. I say, if I made you a billionaire right now, what would you do with your time? And most people, funny enough, just go, I don't know, I like travel. And I go, okay, like are you going to travel for 7 years and then die? And they go like, I don't really know. But I've done that with 1,000 questions. And that's why I was like to say I have the clarity of someone who's already dead. Right. And that's really the key.
Wow.
And I think to wrap up this terrific mini episode with Brenden, speaking of questions, I always have one question I ask my guests. What is one thing you didn't believe was true until you did something that you love?
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing recently that I've changed my mind on with Danny is short form content. So when I was getting started in Master Talk, I told Danny from day one, I was like, there's no way I'm going to post short form content. Like TikTok is for kids or Instagram's for people who don't have the attention spans of people who want to watch an hour and a half podcast or something else. And I've completely changed my mind on that. I think there's actually a lot of key
Potential?
benefits.
Yeah.
Potential,
Yeah.
but also key benefits to short form. Because like I'm addicted to TikTok now. Like I watch a bunch of short form, and I actually see the value in short form now because there's specific content formats that actually work better short form than they do long form. One example in podcasting is like now I don't watch the full episode of a podcast. I scroll for clips, and only if I like the clips, then I'll download the full episode and actually invest an hour and a half to listen to it. So that's one example.
Perfect. Thank you so much for introducing your life to us. If you like this episode, stay tuned for a few days. You will see the full episode with Brenden. As always, where can we find you, Brenden?
Yeah, for sure. This is great. Thanks for having me, guys. So, 2 ways to keep in touch. The first one is my YouTube channel. So just type Master Talk in one word. You'll have access to hundreds of free videos on how to speak. And the second way to keep in touch is you can attend one of my free workshops. I do an online one every 2 weeks over Zoom, and that's rockstarcommunicator.com.
Nice.
Perfect. As always, my name is Danny. I'm here with my co-host.
KYP James.
Kevin G.
And remember,
The KYP.
Kill your pride, baby.
I wish love you 아무도 모르지 어떻게든 너 만나서 예쁜